Thanks again for joining today. I know your time is valuable. I'll be talking about exploring the benefits of asset management, really getting into the business drivers as well. I'm a transportation solution specialist with Bentley, and I work in the asset and network performance group. This is part three of a Tech Talk series. These have been developed so you can watch them in isolation. So it doesn't matter that you didn't watch the first two parts. They are both available on demand. So the introduction to asset management and its strategy, the strategic approach to the asset management system. And today I'll be talking about the benefits of asset management, and then October 10th or 11th, depending on where you're situated, I'll be discussing the asset management policy. Policy drives the strategic decision making, which drives asset performance. And all these will be made available on demand after their completion. And today, the Tech Talk is approximately 40 minutes, I would say. Today, I'll be talking about traditional asset management approaches, and I'll go through the history, um, mainly generation one, two, and three. Benefits of asset management, get into the business drivers, safety and environment drivers, and then I'll talk about asset management maturity. So if you didn't watch the first two parts, it was basically on asset management and the asset management system. So an asset management system is primarily designed to support the delivery of an organizational strategic plan. The organizational strategic plan is the starting point for development of the asset management policy, strategy, objectives, and plans. These in turn direct the optimal combination of life cycle activities to be applied across the diverse portfolio of fixed assets or asset systems themselves. So, and this would be in accordance with their criticalities, condition, and performance. So this sort of top-down connected thread shown here on the right is a key feature of the asset management system. So the clear line of sight from the organization, the direction and the goals down to the individual day-to-day activities. Likewise, the bottom upwards monitoring of asset characteristics, problems, risks, and opportunities should provide the factual basis for really adjusting and refining realistic asset management strategies and plans through a process of continuous improvement. Also, such asset management reality should inform and influence the expectations of stakeholders and the aspirations of the organizational strategic plan. So this is sort of a two-way communication chain, but it needs to go both top down and bottom up. So a little history lesson. Maintenance and maintenance management can be divided into these three stages. I'm not going to get into what people are calling the 4.0 generation right now. But the first generation covers a period of up to World War II. So in these days, industry was, not very mechanical, so downtime didn't really matter much. This meant that prevention of equipment failure was, not really a high priority to most managers. And at the same time, most equipment was simple and much of it was really over designed, so this made it reliable and easy to repair. When we got into the second generation, things changed dramatically during World War II. So wartime pressures increased the demand for goods of all kinds, while the supply of industrial manpower dropped sharply. So this led to increased mechanical systems, and by the 1950s, machines of all types were more common and they became more complex. And then this, of course, led to many industries depending on them for organizational success. So this led to the idea that equipment failures could and should be prevented, which in turn developed the concept of preventative maintenance, RPM. In the 1960s, this consisted mainly of equipment overhauls done at really fixed intervals. So this led to the growth of maintenance planning and controlled systems, which really help greatly to bring maintenance under control. And they're still an established part of the practice of maintenance today. Um, the third generation, this is really since really the mid 70s, the process of change in the industry was, gathering, greater momentum. So changes were classified under the headings of new expectations, new research, and of course, new techniques. So downtime has always affected the productivity capability of physical assets by really reducing the output, increasing operational costs, and interfering, of course, with customer service. And this is especially true in transportation. So by the 1960s and 70s, this is where, a majority of the concern was for mining, manufacturing, and transportation sectors. So in recent years, the growth of mechanical and automation systems has meant that really reliability and availability have also become key issues. Now, more and more failures have, serious safety or environmental consequences at a time when standards in these areas are really rising rapidly. In some parts of the world, the point is approaching where organizations either conform to society's safety and environmental and expectations or they cease to operate. So this adds an order of magnitude to our dependence on the reliability of our physical assets, one which goes beyond cost and which becomes a simple matter of organizational survival. So the cost of maintenance itself is rising rapidly. So in some industries, it is now one of the highest or even the highest element of operating costs. So as a result, across 30 years, we've seen um, a movement of this being, almost nowhere in organizations to the top element for organizational success as a cost control priority. And there have been, really explosive growth in new maintenance concepts and techniques. So hundreds have been developed over the past, 15 years, and more are emerging every year. So this slide shows how the classical importance of overhauls and administrative systems has grown to include new developments in a number of different fields. And some of these would include decision support tools. This would include, hazard studies, failure modes, and effects analysis, new maintenance techniques such as condition monitoring, designing equipment with a much greater emphasis on reliability and maintainability, right? Designed for reliability. A major shift in organizational thinking towards participation, team working, and flexibility. And we're starting to understand the power of cross-functional teams. So a major challenge facing maintenance managers nowadays is not only to learn what these techniques are, but then to decide which are worthwhile and which are not for their specific organization, of course. So if we make the right choices, it is possible to improve asset performance and at the same time contain and even reduce the cost of maintenance. So if we make the wrong choices, new problems are created while existing problems only get worse. So what do you think of this picture? It seems like the beaver is having a bad day, and I use the beaver because I'm Canadian. So um, there are numerous tools and methodologies associated with asset management that are, widely available and employed by organizations. And such tools include value engineering, life cycle costing, reliability-centered maintenance, RCM, risk-based inspection, total productive maintenance, cost versus risk optimization. Um, but it is essential for organizations to recognize that good asset management cannot be achieved successfully through the use of these tools alone, right? So no single tool um, uh, can address, control, and solve all the problems associated with your organization. So a common broken link in the asset management system is usually between the strategic asset management objectives, if they even exist in the organization, and the asset management plan. So if this link is not there, we're going to face the exact same problem the beaver's facing in the picture. So managing assets in isolation from the business processes is not asset management. So true asset management requires integrated, specific engineering solutions with the broader business processes such as life cycle planning, performance analysis, and risk management that optimizes the strategy and delivery mechanisms. So what really are the benefits of, asset management? And I have a bullet list here. But good asset management provides, you know, all of the following here. So if we look at improved performance, it's improving the return on investments and reducing costs that can be achieved while preserving the asset value without sacrificing the short or long-term realization of the organizational objectives. Now, informed asset investment decisions is about enabling the organization to improve its decision making and effectively balance costs, risk, opportunities, and performance. Improved services and outputs is assuring the performance of assets can lead to improved services or products that, consistently meet or exceed the expectations of customers and stakeholders. Demonstrated social responsibility, so improving the organization's ability to reduce emissions, conserve resources, and adapt to climate change, enables it to really demonstrate social responsibility and ethical business practices and stewardship. Managing risk, so reducing financial losses, improving health and safety, goodwill and reputation, minimizing environmental and social impact can really result in reduced liabilities such as insurance premiums, fines, and penalties. Improved efficiency and effectiveness is really about reviewing and improving the processes, procedures, and asset performance, which can improve efficiency and effectiveness and really help with the achievement of the organizational objectives. Improved organizational sustainability, again, effectively managing short and long-term effects, expenditures, and performance. This can improve the sustainability of operations. Enhanced reputation through improved customer satisfaction in transit agencies. That is a huge factor. Stakeholder awareness and confidence. Demonstrated compliance, transparently conforming with legal, statutory, and regulatory requirements, as well as adhering to asset management standards, policies, processes, really can enable demonstration of compliance. So these are the main benefits of having a good asset management system in place. So let's review, a couple of these benefits in a little bit more detail, sort of drive into some of the business factors here. So this information is based on a case study from ABB, which was presented at the IMEC. So the OEE that I have circled there is the overall equipment effectiveness. It's the best practices metric that identifies the percentage of planned production time that is truly productive. So an OEE score of 100% represents perfection, right? So producing only goods and parts or producing services as fast as possible with absolutely no downtime, right? So that's not really possible, but it can be used as that benchmark. And it can also be used as a baseline. So, as a benchmark, it can be used to compare the performance of a given production asset to industry standards, um, to similar in-house assets, or to see results for different shifts working, on the same asset different times. So as a baseline, it can be used to track progress over time and really eliminating waste from, given production asset. So Considering the planned hours and max production per hour, we can calculate the theoretical production per year. Considering the OEE, we can then define the actual production per year and consequently the contribution margin per year. Considering the fixed cost, we can define the profit, and then by calculating the revenue, we can calculate the profitability. Now we can also look at the NOWC, which is the net operating working capital. Then by taking into account the capital employed, we can define the capital turnover. And then finally, we can define the return on investment of our profitability. The ROCE is the return on capital employed. It is a financial ratio that measures a company's profitability and the efficiency with which its capital is employed. So we want to increase that number. And we can do it in a variety of ways. So let's first look at the OEE, right? And if we increase the overall equipment effectiveness from 60 to 70%, this case study by ABB proved that that would increase the ROCE from 6.8% to 12.25%, right? So it makes sense for a good reliability program. But how else can we calculate that increase in ROCE? We can achieve the same return on investment by increasing the unit price by 6.2%. But can we actually increase the price, or is this defined by the market? And if we increase the price, what happens to the demand, right? Simple economics. Now, at the same amount of return on investment, this can be achieved by actually reducing the cost of maintenance by a little over 95%. So we can only imagine the repercussions there. So ABB basically proved that they could achieve the same increases in ROCE from increasing a unit cost by 6.2%. Of course, this would be in a perfect world where it doesn't affect the demand of that product after increasing the price, or by reducing the maintenance cost by approximately 95%, assuming there won't be any repercussions associated with increased downtime as a result for budget cuts being done to maintenance, right? There's long-term serious effects when we do that. So basically increasing the overall equipment effectiveness by 10% achieve that same ROCE. So this is why organizations in private industries such as aviation, process plants, mining, and automotive industries are leaders in reliability, and we can learn a lot from them in transportation. Now, specifically, a leader in transportation is Network Rail, and this was shared with the industry at the 2015 infrastructure, and this is part of the yearbook publication, but with a 2.5 million British pound investment, they're on target of achieving the 123 million British pound in savings. And of course, what they were aiming to do is 30% efficiency gains by 2019. It is 2019, but this was in a publication that was shared, and they shared the numbers with the industry. Now, when we look at this case study and really reliability effectiveness and how it can improve an organization through doing proactive work. So these are numbers based on 200 billion RAV. RAV stands for replacement asset value. And in this case study, 1,000 maintenance employees were included. So the current proactive work by this organization was 35%. And then what we want to do is we want to increase proactive work, and we don't want too much reactive work. So we have a target there. We have world-class numbers also identified. Um, and you can see there that even world-class, there's always going to be reactive work. We do have to react, and actually run to failure isn't a maturity level. It's actually a strategy. So if you have assets that are easily replaced with low downtime, it makes sense to have those assets run to failure. But when we look at these numbers, when we go from 35 to 50%, shifting proactive work, we have a cost savings of over $4 million based on that case study numbers. Also, an asset management system helps with search time, and searching for information is a killer in time consumption. And these numbers represent a case study based on 500 employees at $67.50 an hour. So that's also a loaded rate. Um, and what we want to do is just identify target and world class and understand that if we're at 18.75% currently, we can't get to that world class target right away. So realistic target, reduce that to 12%. And by doing that, we can increase cost savings of $8 million. So that's shifting resources where they're required because now we're not wasting our time looking for information. It makes us more effective. And that's exactly what happened with the Oregon Department of Transportation. So this was shared at the 2017 Year in Infrastructure, and this is a presentation slide. So reduce time to create a full spatial data layer update by 3 person months, increase reporting efficiency by an average of 60%, realize data management efficiency by uh, 20 to 25%, reduce time to prepare federal reporting data by 83%. And if we look there at the total estimate for ROI, it's 6.1 million over 5 years, and that's what the business drivers behind such initiatives to optimize maintenance strategies. Now, another case study here, and this is based on the same 500 employees at that 65 or 67.5 hourly loaded rate. Um, and it's about this here is about rework and the effectiveness of asset lifecycle information management. So currently, rework in this example, the organization's at 20%, relatively high, and we want to reduce that number and have a realistic target of 10%. And world class, of course, is that 2%. But going from 20 to 10% case study represents a cost savings of over $6 million. And another example in transportation was CSX, actually the winner in the road and rail asset performance category at the infrastructure awards. But basically, CSX combined data sources into one platform, providing really an interactive visualization of the data that can be manipulated across embedded, asset information for more accurate and efficient decision making. So their asset management solution enabled seamless integration to the CSX Patch Rail Request System, which was a custom ERP system that they had, so they could see the request and see the condition of the asset in one area. So it increased accuracy and it increased visibility. But again, the importance of making better decisions, so a 2% better analysis represents a $1.5 million, that's US funds, in cost avoidance and doing maintenance in the wrong location. Now, those are the business drivers. And what are some other drivers? Safety, right? So having good asset management in place will also reduce results in fewer accidents in the workplace, right? So it's going to increase safety. So um, Previously, I talked about OEE, and then this compares the overall equipment effectiveness with injury rates, and it proved that they're actually related to each other, right? So this, when we look at the data, you can clearly see that when the OEE increased, you can see the injury rate dropped significantly. We also know the huge impact failures have in transportation, not only with safety aspects, but also environmental aspects. So these two examples in the image, just they're worth a thousand words, right? So we have a derailment and we have a rollover of freight carrying crude oil. So if we are, providing safe infrastructure, we can minimize these types of failures. Now, one of the other benefits of asset management is risk management, right? So asset management defines risk from a high level, systems or subsystems, down to the lowest maintainable level. So failure mode, would be an example. So the risk can be understood at the root, and we can go through a root cause analysis as well. So risk management processes will prepare an organization for significant events like accidents, incidents, or impacts of climate change to ensure that it has appropriate contingency planning in place for mechanisms for really assuring business success. So the organization will assess emergency and incident response needs, plan to meet them, develop procedures and processes to cope with them, test its planned responses, and seek to improve the effectiveness of its response where necessary. So the organization will, for example, consider potential, uh, emergencies arising from a significant failure of critical assets resulting in the loss of service or supply to customers, or a hazardous condition is arising, extreme weather conditions, storm winds, floods, heavy snowfall, lightning strikes, and heavy snowfall could result in avalanches in some areas. Um, Unplanned release of hazardous liquids or gases, explosions or fires, loss of power or loss to control systems. So a combination of events or risks which may result in an emergency situation. So the organization will develop, identify, and provide appropriate emergency equipment and contingency and really to consistently inspect and preferably test its availability and performance. So, what does good asset management look like? And we need to have a consistent scale of capabilities and maturities against which organizations can, identify their strengths and really improvement opportunities. So, such a scale is helpful for really diagnosing and prioritizing the development of new capabilities for benchmarking and demonstrating progress, competency, or excellence to stakeholders such as staff, regulators, investors, and customers. It also helps establish the processes and habits of continual improvement by providing an objective basis of evidence across the several dimensions and attributes of asset management. So there are, of course, many capability and maturity models already developed and used for different aspects of the business or organizational activity. In most cases, these provide a complete scale of adequacy or sophistication for specific capabilities, processes, or methods. But asset management is a different topic, and it's a difficult topic to organize into such discrete boxes to be defined as adequate or mature or competent or even world class. So the capabilities and maturities in asset management rely, at least as much the coordination, integration, optimizations, and alignments of multiple activities. And and the combined effects of the cultural dimension of the organization. So asset management has an important principle of fit for purpose. So any objective, definitions of capability and maturity must recognize the context and what is appropriate, possible, and worthwhile in such environments. So where do we focus? In asset management, or do we focus on the asset management system? Now, one of the issues that is often confused when talking about asset management maturity is whether we are talking about the maturity of the organization's asset management system or the maturity of its overall asset management capabilities and performance. So in order to explore this, it is important to understand the distinction between asset management system and systems and the discipline of asset management. And this was covered a little bit in the previous tech talks, but ISO 55000 states that an asset management system is used to direct, coordinate, and control asset management activities. It provides improved risk control and assures that the achievement of the asset management objectives are done on a consistent basis. However, not all asset management activities can be formalized through an asset management system. For example, aspects such as leadership, culture, motivation are not managed through the asset management system, but they have a significant influence on the achievement of the asset management objectives. Additionally, 55002 states that it should be noted, however, that compliance with the requirements of ISO 55001 represents achieving the minimum standard for an effective asset management system and should not be seen as a final goal, right? We need that as a starting point and then move towards continuous improvement. Now, the Institute of Asset Management, the IAM, has been working with the Global Forum on Maintenance and Asset Management, the GFMAM, to really develop a description of the wider discipline of asset management with the international consensus. So this resulted in the defined asset management landscape comprising of 39 subjects across asset management. Now, if you watched previous tech talks, I talked a little bit about this. This is a diagram from the IIM. I have taken out, there is a connection to the overall organizational objectives here that was tied to the strategy and tied to the risk. So I'm just looking at the asset management system here, right? Now, these 39 elements that I'm talking about, there is a breakdown for each category, and they consist of a total of 39. But how do we know what is poor, what is good, and what is excellent? And then when we can, break down each category, and I'm going to pick one and go with the strategy and planning and just look at the policy. So if we want to grade our policy, um, this is what IAM provides. And I'm not going to go through the whole policy definition of maturity level here, um, but it's great information to have if you're developing your policy. So I guess maturity levels here, 0 to 5. So the organization has not recognized this subject and or there is no evidence of commitment to develop it. That would be a 0, right? But we want to go towards 5. But the IM is a great reference for this. And what do we do with those grades, right? So they also, when we, you know, do these gradings of the 39 elements, we can develop a graph like this, so we can really see where our strengths are and where our weaknesses are. So I guess in many cases, the internal self-assessment of asset management maturity may not be, adequately objective and systematic. So many times external independent assessments can be valuable sort of, for the required insight and realism, so there's not a biased opinion. So there are, of course, many consulting or services organizations that provide such assessments and gap analysis. Um, for organizations that have already reached the competent level of maturity, and a management system is in place to meet all the ISO 55000 requirements, whether it has or has not been certified, it is recommended that when you reach that point, further maturity assessments are only, performed by very experienced assessors who recognize the fit for purpose and the context-dependent opportunities for future advancement. And again, the IAM here, they have this bow tie signifying the maturity. The IAM is a great resource for information. So they've developed an illustration of the maturity scale in the form of a bow tie here. This bow tie recognizes that organizations begin implementing asset management through a process of alignment and integration, which, converges to a level of competence that is recognizable as good practice. Whether the assets are fixed, whether the assets are linear or systems, but there's that organizational context. This central state of being competent, therefore, corresponds to the coordinated, integrated, aligned, and life cycle managed level of maturity. The right hand of the bow tie there um, then expands to acknowledge that organizations necessary to diverge in defining their future target levels of best appropriate practice with different, context dependent degrees of worthwhile sophistication and optimization. So there's no magic bullet to reach the world class. Everyone's path is unique and different, and it aligns with those organizational objectives. That's all I had today. I would like to thank you again for taking the time out of your busy day. So if you want to send me direct emails, feel free to. My email is noted on the screen. Um, Also, I'm fairly active on LinkedIn. If you want to add me on LinkedIn and connect, I do post, asset management related information that I share.